Bill goes to the supermarket. He meets people in the street, pretends to remember them. He has an ex-girlfriend, and he works in an office. Bill is simply named and given a simple life because he represents all of us. Bill is Bill, but he's also you and me. He experiences his own life, but he also lives forever and watches the entropy of the universe. He is both corporeal and singular, but also the stand-in for all of mankind. And if he seems like a bit of a downer, that's unmistakably deliberate. The animation style seems simplistic at a glance, but the choices for how Bill and the other characters are drawn actually gives weight to what we're seeing. The story is about how fragile Bill is, both physically and emotionally. He's suffering from a disease that's slowly killing him, and his depression and memory loss have ruined his mental stability. In other words, the fragility of the stick figures mirrors the fragility of Bill's well-being. He can be snapped in two. Although we're looking at stick figures, we always know who Bill is in relation to the other characters he interacts with. He wears a little hat, but even if he didn't, the omniscient narrator tells us.
In the supermarket, Bill was always very careful to select fruit from only the back of the produce piles, as the fruit in the front was at crotch level to the other customers. An old man who smelled of gasoline held up an onion and said, "Big onion," to no one in particular. He smiled at Bill, and Bill looked at his socks.
The choice of narration over traditional dialogue has several positives. First, we're able to immediately dig into Bill's mind and his feelings. No long stretches of dialogue. We rarely hear anyone say anything. We only hear the narrator's interpretation of what's happening. Second, the narration allows us to flow through Bill's life. One scene in a supermarket, for example, would take a few minutes in a traditional film. But in this film, the supermarket only exists to make one statement that lasts all of 10 seconds. Third, it gives the feeling of a novel, or even more like a children's storybook. Most of the action takes place within these white circles surrounded by a black background. This gives us two things, a sense of intimacy and a sense of voyeurism. Nothing else in the world is important, only what's happening to Bill. It's all blacked out. Also, we feel as if we're looking through a keyhole, watching Bill's tragic life without his consent. It's intimate, but it's also scandalous. Time plays an important role in the film, as explained in this scene.
At lunch, he told Bill about a physics book he was reading about time, how the passing of time is just an illusion, because all of eternity is actually taking place at once. The past never vanishes away, and the future has already happened. All of history is fixed and laid out, like an infinite landscape of simultaneous events that we simply happen to travel through in one direction.
So what does that mean for this film? Bill is losing his memories. Some of what we see in the middle of the film is revealed to be holes in his memory filled in to replace the loss. The film discusses our place in the whole of human existence. If everything's happening at the same time, we're immortal. The end of the film shows Bill living millions of years into the future in some kind of dream or wish against death, but it actually ties itself to what Bill's coworker said about time all happening at once. Bill stretches into infinity. It's a hopeful ending to what is largely a film about facing the terrible weight of the world and dealing with existential horror and even garden variety depression. Bill shows signs of depression early on. Lack of sleep, loss of interest in what once made him happy, a stagnant inability to do anything.
Pretty soon he was watching a boxing match on a Mexican channel. He'd been watching a lot of boxing lately, but didn't really know why. In the fourth round, there was an accidental headbutt that split open one of the fighters' heads pretty badly. They showed it over and over again in slow motion.
It's hard to describe depression to someone who doesn't experience it on a regular basis. And even if they do, it's still hard to describe because everyone has their own shade of depression, their own symptoms, and inner conflict and intrusive thoughts. For some people, it's just background radiation, like you know it's there and it's hurting you, but it's not persistently going after you. And for others, it's exactly that. Every day is a nightmare, and you don't want to do anything, but you have to because nobody is taking care of you, and your day is right there, laughing at you, making you feel small, and you drag your depression around like an anchor, and it ruins everything. Every day is a nightmare. It's just a waking, unending haunted house. Like there are no really good days, just some days that are bad and some days that are worse. And you hope for those bad days instead of the worst days. Like a bad day is Christmas morning. God, if only every moment could be like Christmas morning. If only everyone could just be bad instead of worse. Like that's the bar you've set. That's the lowest expectation. You wake up and you just pray. You pray that all you've got ahead of you is a bad day. That's okay so long as nobody sees you crying in your own car for no reason. And people are so bad at dealing with you because they think all you need to do is exercise or smile more. And I am so tired of smiling. But this film, It's Such a Beautiful Day, gets that. It gets the horror of depression and everyday life. Early in the film, Bill recognizes that his routine, which he finds so strange, is his life, and that any deviation from his routine is actually the truly strange part, because that's not the norm. It's this terrible recognition of what life is really like. The film is actually 3 short films molded into one, but it seems like it always should have been this one film. It tells its story so perfectly, with such importance and sympathy.